Well, hello everybody. I wanted to come out first and do a quick little intro because, hey, a live podcast, like what's that about, right? We're about to find out together, live, in a trial by fire. So let me do a quick little intro of myself first. So my name is Daniel Foreman. I'm on our marketing team now. I'm a commercial strategist here at Lighthouse. And my background is actually in revenue management. So before making that transition to the marketing team, I was a revenue manager for about 10 years or so. So I kind of have that background and that skill set of revenue management. And I'm also a really big podcast fan. So what I found was in our industry, there aren't really that many podcasts. Yes, there are a few. But if you're an actual RM or you're a commercial strategist or something like that, then you don't really have an outlet that you can go to if you just want to throw on a podcast and maybe listen to something fun or educational for 30 minutes on your way to work or something like that. So I felt like there was a niche, so we're trying to fill it, and I highly recommend that you go and check out that first season of the podcast because there are a lot of educational things in that first season. I think you'll find it really fun. And then about 6 months ago, we transitioned over to the video element. So now I've kind of changed gears a little bit, and what we're doing is we're having still educational, but fun, super casual conversations with industry leaders, and that's what you're going to get today. So really quick, I just want to jump into the theme of today's episode, and we're going to be talking about more than just rooms. And what I mean by that is if you were to go back in time 10 years ago when I started doing revenue management, as I'm sure many of you can attest, calls were completely different, right? It was rate. Maybe you would talk about yield management, but it was very much focused on just, okay, what's our pickup? How much can we push rate? What are we dropping rate to this weekend? And 25 minutes later, boom, we're done. Here are the call notes. Now I have the benefit of I'm in our Dallas office and I'm able to overhear these revenue calls that are going on now in 2025. And it is amazing how much it has changed. It really is no longer a revenue management call. It's very much a commercial strategy call. So all the time you will hear people, they're on the phone with a photographer like, hey, can we get that content updated on our brand website? Or they're saying things like, hey, we're running this new promotional campaign, or what's the latest with social media trends and stuff like that. So we have very much moved beyond just talking about rooms, right? So with that intro, I think we have two guests today that are absolutely perfect to talk about this. We've got Kelly Cronin and Ingela Heintz. And of course, we're also going to be joined by my wonderful co-host, Blake Ryder. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and come up here and start the episode. So I want to start with some intros. So Kelly, can I start with you? And I would love to hear, especially like your journey to leadership in your role today, because I know about 8 months or so ago, you started a new role and you actually made that transition from a revenue director to now you're a commercial strategy director, correct?
Correct. So hi, I'm Kelly Cronin. I'm a commercial director for Village Hotels. So we have 33 hotels currently across regional UK. And yeah, you're absolutely right. 8 months ago, my role transitioned. But in all fairness, I really resonated with what you said before because that transition had happened way beyond that. There was a change in title then, but I think anybody in a revenue-specific role has seen that evolving over the last few years. And it's the only way, really, you can drive the success that you want to, is across the entire commercial function. And I think to Joe's point before, a lot of those leadership roles are coming from revenue management because of that natural evolving that's happened over time. We went through quite an intensive sale process over the last year. We were acquired by Blackstone in June last year. And I think that also presented us as a business with a lot of opportunity to look at where our gaps were. I'm going through that analysis as you do when you're changing ownership. You really do look internally as to think, actually, we've got this luxury now of people looking at our business in a very different way, as you would do traditionally. So, yeah, it's definitely been a transition more over time than just 8 months ago. Okay,
nice. And Ingela, would you mind giving a little bit of background on yourself and then also kind of your journey? Because I know when we talked first and kind of did that little prep call for the podcast episode was, you started in operations, right?
Yes, so I'm Ingela. I work for Norlandia Hotel Group as Chief Revenue Officer. And yes, I started my career in housekeeping, like everybody else, obviously. And then I went into F&B because I thought food is amazing and I love wine, so that works perfectly. And I realized, no, I don't. So then opportunity came along as reservations manager. I'm like, hey, I'm great for that. So obviously that's what I'm going to do. But a little bit ego as I am, I'm like, I'm going to become a GM, so I'm going to show off, and this is what I'm going to be. So then I nagged a bit too much, and they sent me way far north to, where the Google Earth kind of ends, and then you keep going. So that's, I did 3 years as a GM there. Turned out I was okay at it. So then I became sort of what we in Scandinavia, or especially Norway, call a potato. So you just kind of send them where they need it. So then I became a little bit of a fixer for different properties, or we needed a GM here for 3 months and there for a year. And then I finally got to be what I was supposed to do, what my education actually is from hospitality school, which is revenue management. And of course, then came the pandemic, so that didn't actually happen. But, I ended up there eventually. So that's how I got to be here today.
Nice. So let's kind of roll with this theme here, this more than rooms theme. And Blake and I are going to open up with some stories. We have a couple of stories for you guys that I think will be entertaining. And then we'll turn it over to you guys to kind of hear about, what makes your companies unique and some of your properties unique. And if you can think of any funny stories as well, please feel free to add them. So here's a story of a time where we won. When I was a revenue manager at the time, and we ended up winning a piece of group business, and it was not because of the room rate. So there was this choir group, this massive religious choir group, and they had been calling around our city looking for basically a rate. We had one of the 2 best offers, okay, but they were really asking us, like, hey, what can you do to sweeten the pot? Like, why should we book with your hotel? And what ultimately landed that piece of business, and we won the group RFP, was we offered them practice space in our meeting space downstairs. So we won the group, not really knowing what we were getting into. And so the group checks in, and for the next 7 nights consecutively, they would practice in that downstairs meeting space. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, right? Except for when you've got a line of check-ins and people are walking in and all they hear is just, oh. It created a very angelic check-in experience for a lot of guests.
Were you doing the singing too?
I was joining it.
That wasn't bad.
Yeah. You got to practice your vibrato.
You have a good range.
It was actually live performance. It wasn't even a music background.
So you get a free live performance with this. That was an example of, but again, it wasn't just the room rate, right? It wasn't just because we offered a $99 rate. It was because we had the idea to also, hey, let's throw in this amenity. So, yeah.
Choir on check-in.
Yeah, exactly.
TripAdvisor probably littered with those comments. Good.
So, Blake, I know we were kind of talking earlier, and I think you have kind of an interesting story. Now, this one, I don't know if you can monetize necessarily.
You might. I have an idea of how you might. It's a weird story. Is that okay?
I think we can handle it.
Right, this is meant to be entertaining.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And it's not about rooms revenue. It's about food and beverage revenue.
In a roundabout way. It's about...
Indirectly. Okay. So... this is a weird one. So this is a true story. So I'm working in hotels. This is before I went to college. I was an intern at a hotel when I was in high school, and I was rotating around the various departments. So I'm at my room service portion of my internship, okay? So I'm at the internship, and I'm sitting at room service, and we get a phone call. Guy orders some pecan pie. My colleague, who also happened to be my friend, takes the pecan pie up to the room. He gets to the room, guy opens the door, tray comes off, here's the pecan pie. The guy says, okay, listen to me. This is the guest, says to my friend, the server, I'd like you to take this pecan pie and smash it in my face. My friend had no idea what to say. He goes, I'll have you repeat that for me. I'd like you to take this pecan pie and smash it in my face. And my friend stares at him. He says, I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that. I appreciate the opportunity you've given me, but I can't do that. The guy says, okay, no problem. And my friend comes back to the restaurant, immediately tells me what happened. and I say, I have to somehow get involved in this story. I need to see this through. So I wait a couple hours, and now I'm on rounds to pick up the trays. So I have the guy's room number, and I got to go pick up the tray. So I go up to the room, and sure enough, there's a tray sitting outside the door, and an untouched piece of pecan pie is sitting on that thing. So he actually ordered it specifically to have it smashed in his face. So if we are looking for alternative revenue streams,
That's definitely a new one.
for the hotel, guests might actually pay for that service. True story.
It's definitely one quite out there. I think we had an example, and so we've got a hotel in Blackpool, and if anyone knows Blackpool, it's a northern seaside resort. It's a great place over the summer, highly entertaining in many ways. We are situated next to the zoo, and last year they found themselves in the position of having 2 maternal, very pregnant elephants, and we won a contract off the basis that you could hear the animals from the hotel in the zoo. So the maternity team for the elephants would know from the noises that they could pick up on the receptors how the elephants were doing. So they were on 24-hour rotas to monitor the maternal behaviour of the elephants from the right-hand side of our car park. So that is also an example where, not a typical
That's
way.
a new one as well. That's a tip, yeah.
You got to get inventive.
I think you should charge double for the experience. I mean, even
Maternity units, really.
we don't have a zoo. I mean, obviously we do a lot of incremental different things with our properties. We have 37 properties currently. We're adding 1 more in June, and then we're currently building a few more as well. I don't know if anyone here has been to Norway. It's obviously a smaller country. We're very well known for fjords, and that's about it, and Northern Lights. But we do, our company, we specialize in putting all our hotels in the locations you haven't heard of. So that's sort of where we start out. And surprisingly enough, we do get guests there, which, I mean, they've heard of the locations that I've never heard of. So, and there's a property, one of the ones up north where I got sent to, where we do actually a lot of business with different US governments and thanks to the Russians, obviously. And we also do a lot of Navy, German Navy and so on, and NATO works there, and NASA comes there. So it's quite an interesting, unique location. And what they've never heard of is obviously like Norwegian food, what we consider just everyday items I go to the store and pick up. And just something that we put on a boiled egg, a little caviar. It's not the nice fancy caviar, but just those small breakfast items. They were, wow, what an experience, what a food. So we used to start selling those kind of things that we would just take out of our breakfast buffet and charge extra. And then we would tell them that this is obviously a delicacy, which, clearly it is. And they should bring this home because their wives need to know about this and their children, and they should share this wonderful Norwegian experience of brown cheese on a waffle, which is delicious, by the way, if you haven't had it. Oh yeah, the caviar, amazing. It's a little bit salty, so if you don't like that, it's off. And I know we spoke about salt licorice, which I still don't understand.
Salty licorice, yeah.
I still don't understand it. If you go to Norway, I do apologize for it. Some people really like it. But yeah, I think we just took the opportunity, and it's a smaller property where we don't have the restaurant, we don't have the opportunities, the bed and breakfast. So I think we got our staff involved and just like, what can we do to increase money? And I love the idea that we just sell the things that we otherwise would have given away for free. I mean, they do pay for breakfast, but now they pay twice.
And so speaking of some of those guests, what is something interesting about those guests that you've learned? Because, kind of like I talked about at the beginning was, we're no longer just focusing on just rates, right? So when we take a step back and we think about it in terms of total commercial strategy, we're also doing more research into, okay, what are our feeder markets? How many nights are they staying? Where are they coming from? like what makes these guests click, right? How do I know that this guest is gonna like enjoy like having those little touches and like the Norwegian food and stuff like that? So what are some things about, some interesting facts about your guests that you've learned as a commercial leader that maybe you wouldn't have known if you were just in a silo, just a revenue analyst just plugging away at rates all day? Are there any like interesting markets that come to visit Norway that maybe none of us would expect?
I mean, obviously our biggest market, obviously Europe, just as a broad market, but Asia, very popular, direct flights for Northern Lights. What I find quite interesting is the South American market, which isn't the biggest, but it's they have a very different spending willingness that we don't necessarily see from different markets as well. And most of our properties are, I mean, we do have the Norwegian experiences, but Northern Lights, you need darkness and you need nice weather. And if you don't have that, well, welcome to Norway. So we do have a lot of guests that come. And I think also, I know we talked about this in a pre-sale, we are one of the 4 locations in the world where you can snorkel with orcas. And in South America, and I don't know if you know that, the orcas, they will eat you. So obviously, big ups for us.
Then you lose the revenue.
Yeah, forever.
I mean, like release the whales, we try everything. No, but people come there for that experience. They want to see the Northern Lights. They want to snorkel with orcas, even though it's 4 degrees in the water and, weird people. But you can come for a week and you might not even leave the lobby because it's snowstorm and it's above the Arctic Circle. What do you expect? So people tend to just extend their stay by a week, and it creates wonderful moments for us. We're a small property, we don't necessarily have all the rooms, but it shows how people are willing to travel for this one unique experience. And we also have a property in Western Norway that is internationally renowned for their wine cellar and has won many awards for that. And we do have people from all over the world flying in for 2-3 days just to have that one unique wine bottle that you might not get anywhere else because they don't necessarily exist anymore. So I think that is something we don't necessarily see when looking at a screen. It's just how that guest behavior and those kind of unique markets that apparently attracts Sweden and Norway.
Yeah, and Kelly, I'll throw this over to you, but I know when we first talked, you had, I thought, like a really funny line where you were like, hey, if you just sit in the lobby and observe, like you'll learn all kinds of things about the guests that you never knew.
It's insane. So for anyone that's familiar with our hotels, we have like an everything under one roof concept. That's our overriding branding. So last year we welcomed 1.8 million hotel guests, but we also have 130,000 leisure club members. And also a big community following through our Village Green branding, which is our integration into local communities. So, we are the place that we would like you to go to watch the game or to meet friends. So if you sit in our lobby, you can see people going to a black tie event. There might be a group going to Pilates. There's somebody else going to the Burn studio to do a immersive spin. So there's about 1,000 people a day that are coming through our doors just from these varying different types of revenue. And that's where we spend a lot of time and focus, is really trying to look at every square metre of the property and how we can monetize that. Because there is a community need for, wherever your hotel is, there's people coming through your door that are not just there for the reason that they're there for. They have other requirements, and it's capturing that attention and using that 1,000 people every day to really enforce our branding and our messaging, so that if they are looking at a break somewhere else, or to hold a meeting or to go and meet some colleagues, then hopefully we're kind of front and centre if they're in the location that they're looking for. But yeah, it's quite insane if you sit in one of our lobbies and just look on a day-to-day basis. It's really quite eye-watering.
Yeah. I have a question. I want to take a step back a little bit to kind of what you were saying when you were introducing the podcast. Okay. You said 20 years ago or 10 years ago, revenue calls were just straight up rooms revenue, I should say.
Right.
What do you think it was, and this is for anybody, what do you think it was that caused that fundamental change? Do you think it was that maybe hoteliers were struggling to actually turn profits with the other revenue streams? Was it they just weren't offering as many amenities that could bring people into the door? What was it that fundamentally changed in the practice, in the industry, where it became less about only rooms and more about that total strategy?
I will very quickly take away the cliche answer and just say COVID, just so no one else can steal it. And then I'll throw it over to you guys to give you the more hard answers to come up with.
I just think people want more. I think they really want more. Generally, life is more. And I think that's what you want. And if you just think about a really basic concept of what makes you stay for an extra drink in a bar, it's atmosphere, it's music, it's, we experimented just by putting darts boards in some of our hotels. And yes, we've got a partnership with PDC and, the sponsorship piece, but actually people may not have even known that, but it's a viral thing. People start playing darts, it starts conversation, it starts the social piece. We've then enhanced that now to have electronic interactive darts, because actually we can monetize that and we can sell that as a product that people want to buy. Flight Club is a very popular city centre. So it's really starting small, and I think everybody can have a thought process around that. Just as a management team in your hotel, how do we get somebody to stay for an extra drink? We can all upsell. We can all offer a double or have people walking the floor, but actually people just want more. That's what we think.
I think what you touch on there is very, very true, because, everybody offers a hotel room, no matter what brand you're staying with or what hotel you're staying with, but the unique experiences you can get by actually just spending time in the lobby or in the bar, and people want experiences. They want something that's memorable. And even though I'm going on a business trip, I want to remember this trip. So I want to do something that's a little bit different. And sitting in a hotel room and working, I can do that any other day at home, kind of thing. So I think that has really changed. The need for the experience, the need to have more than just the overnight.
And what would you say is both your companies, like their appetite for almost having an amenity that operates, if not at a loss, but barely a profit, or even a loss for that matter, just to get people in the door because you'll make it up elsewhere? And maybe you guys don't have an appetite for that. I'm just curious. Would you guys take a loss in some areas to make sure you make the money elsewhere?
Actually, I think our company is not participating in that, but Norway has their own breakfast company or competition where every year it's crowned who's the best breakfast. And it's usually the same three winners that sort of rotate because they will spend obscene amount of money on the best breakfast. And I think most of us can agree that breakfast is sort of a necessary evil. And in Norway, where staff cost is very high, food cost is very high, taxes are insane, there's not much margin to go on. So we don't necessarily participate in that. We think everybody... we're multi-brand, so obviously if one of the three brands that compete can win, we're anyways winners. But I think that's definitely something that will get people through the door, that sort of image there.
I think hotels are a bit of a tricky space, though, because there is a guest expectation, isn't there, that if they want to get a coffee in the bar at 11 in the morning, they'll be able to do that even if there's no one else there. And so I think there are, it's looking at those windows of opportunity around where revenue generation is naturally low. So really it's just the principles of revenue management across other areas and saying, well, actually, how do we generate, volume so as opposed to the point that was made before on the discussion that was happening on stage is if you generate the volume and get the people coming through the doors, then you will convert more but we do sometimes get more fixated on that side rather than this overall benefit without doubt. Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you guys this. So what is something that you guys are doing that is unique at your respective companies? And when I say unique, I'm thinking more, what do you guys offer as far as it could be employee benefits, it could be like a key KPI that you're looking at that no one else is looking at, some kind of employee retention or something like that. I know that you mentioned that you had this really legendary gym benefit for your employees that I was jealous of. So you want to maybe start with that one?
I think there's a couple of things. We talk to our guests a lot. We actively have guest feedback groups, and not just through post-stay surveys. We actually invite guests into the room, and our most regular guests, but also people that have only stayed with us once, and incentivize them to give us their feedback. And the conversation we get from that and the feedback does drive a huge amount of our initiatives. One of the things that came through strongly last year was about people's unwillingness to compromise on their daily workout routine, because it's such an integral part of people's day-to-day life. Health, wellness, they don't want to go into a mediocre room of 2 treadmills. And, for some hotels, that might be the facility that you've got, but is there an opportunity to provide local running maps or to do something that is familiar to your guests? And that was a huge theme in our guest feedback last year about unwillingness to compromise on daily activity. The staff benefit that you talk about, so when every year we talk to our staff a lot, we obviously are big advocates of health, fitness and wellness, and every employee gets a leisure club membership at a hotel of their choice. Usually it's their local one, but they can gift that if they want to. They can gift it to a family member. And then last year we introduced a +1, which is actually really funny because it's helping our retention, because we've had people hand their notice in and then effectively their mum has taught them out of it because she wants to go to Pilates every Tuesday, and that's the free membership she gets. But we do have a high uptake, and again, it's we've all got big long lists of benefits, but the proof in the pudding is which ones are actually being used.
Exactly.
Because if you've got a whole list and there's no utilisation, then the employees, I guess, aren't really feeling the benefit of that.
Yeah. And Ingela, is there anything kind of unique that you guys are doing at Norlandia?
We are a smaller company, obviously, not like the bigger Norwegian or Scandinavian brands that usually are very sort of top-down heavy. So we're very focused on, from the head office, we're more of a support role towards the GMs. And the owners, 2 brothers, they are very focused on, if this is your money, how would you want to run your hotel? So what decisions should you make that would increase your ownership money in that sense? And I think in Norway, the biggest sign of trust is not a single contract, it's just a handshake. And that kind of is the entire empowerment of our company as well. Like, there's so much trust into our GMs, into the staff, and it's big respect towards the job they do. We have about 15,000 employees, I think, and the owners know most of them in the sense that they've been to all the hotels and greeted all of them. And I think that really shows a level of respect that is not necessarily common for a lot of other companies out there. But obviously we do our employee surveys and things like that as well, and it really shows getting them involved from the line cook all the way up really builds a trust, it builds a good team to really build great product as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's another thing, and I think you're already kind of starting to touch on this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the sizes, the respective sizes of your companies, right? Because, Village Hotels, I believe 33 hotels right now, and then you're at 37 with a few in the pipeline, right? So being that size, kind of that more, I would say like small to medium-sized chain, what are some of the drawbacks, but then also some of the benefits of being that size? Because I think your companies are at that size where there's both sides of the equation. And one thing I know we talked a little bit about was, it sounds like people in your organization, Ingela, are wearing a lot of hats, and then you also are undergoing, I think, like a PMS transition, or you just were wrapping up a PMS transition with some of your properties, right?
Actually, today has been really good for me because when I go to conferences in Scandinavia, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of heavy brands, the Scandinavian brands, and we are definitely on the smaller side. And we're a multi-brand company. So with our 37 properties, we have currently 9 different brands. And I think the drawback on that is that we don't have, like a lot of you guys, you have great commercial teams and marketing strategists and things on, but we kind of, every hotel follows the brand on that. Mm-hmm. And then our revenue is not, even though it's centralized, it's sort of a additional service you can get. So not every property has. It's very sort of build your own metric puzzle kind of in our company. But at the same time, we do get all the different brands that we work with. And so we get the marketing for all of them. And we also kind of know what's going on in the pipeline there as well. Obviously, we're very bound by confidentiality, otherwise nobody would work with us, and we're quite respected. A lot of people do want to work with us because of the way we work and sort of very compartmentalized, but it does present some challenges in having to have 15 different hats on at the same time. And yeah, like I said, it came through operations up to revenue. I still do every now and then do operations whenever we do a pre-opening. We don't have a pre-opening team, so in a few weeks I'm heading back to one of our properties we're currently renovating. It's been closed for the winter and we're doing a pre-opening. So then I'll be somewhere in the back polishing glasses because that's kind of what's needed. And you wouldn't normally think that of the revenue team, but I'm taking all my 4 guys and being like, here's some silverware and some glasses and have fun polishing. So this is kind of like what we're doing. And yeah, we just converted, and I think it was brought up in the last session about having so many different tech stacks of PMSs and CRSs and RMSs. And we're trying to kind of funnel that into as much as we possible, but we're also very dependent on the brand. So if the brand says you have to use this, then that's what we're using. And we went down from 14 PMSs to 9, and we're very happy about it because it just makes support easier. You know, when a hotel calls and it's like, what am I supposed to do? You have to know all these systems. And at some point, when you've come to system number 30 and 31, you're like, okay, what's the on button here? Yeah. So yeah, we're very happy. But when it came to the revenue part and building all the rooms in one of the systems, I actually built all of it. So that kind of puts me out of revenue again. So yeah, I'm learning a lot. I'm becoming a tech guru, and that's the weirdest thing ever because I really don't know where the on button is.
Nice.
When you put yourself in a position like that, when you're boots on the ground and actually doing the operation stuff, kind of bridging that gap between revenue and ops, do you think it makes you better as a revenue leader by virtue of having that time on property and doing kind of the stuff you just described?
I was thinking about it earlier, and also a little bit about, talking, it's supposed to be in the intro, sort of what gave me a strength as a revenue manager coming through ops. And I think, yes, it does, because I do understand the challenges in operations, and it also makes me not only look on the revenue side or the total revenue, but it also looks me at profit management and lean management. So we're very sort of focusing on the totality of what does it actually cost to sell that one room in terms of also operational side. And being out on the property when I get to talk to the waiters and the housekeeping staff, and where can we shave off that 1 minute in room cleaning, and staff is expensive in Norway, so I think it's every single step kind of helps. And even though, of course, I would love to be behind the screen and looking at data, and I think all of us do, it's good to get out and talk to real people and also kind of understand how the numbers translate into real action. And
No, I was going to say, and then Kelly, I know when we first talked, you mentioned kind of how the departments are broken out at Village, which I thought was kind of unique. Like there's these kind of 3 facets to it, right? There's the commercial side, and there's two other sides, and you mentioned how important it was kind of interacting cross-departmentally with them, right?
Yeah, so we don't deploy any departmental strategy without that wider collaboration first. So our 3 verticals are health and fitness, people and operations, which traditionally is 2 different units, but we can't deliver the right type of person, service and experience without operations being involved. So having one lead over those areas has been hugely successful for us, and we've really seen cohesion between delivery and guest and employee experience when you put those together. And then you've got the commercial vertical that I'm head of, and I think that we really learn from each other, because actually, as the 3 of us, we're a small group, so we're big voices in the room, but the group isn't so big that we can't have really productive conversations and great debate. And, some of the things that Chris, our leisure director, sees in health and fitness, and some of the trends and things that are coming through are all directly transferable to other ways. And sometimes looking at other industries and what they're doing really successfully. As I said before, principles of revenue management apply across everything. We just don't necessarily live that, and so I think equally they're kind of learning as well from this collaboration that's happened, that from this new team that's been generated. This is all the front-facing business teams. So we have a CFO and a CTO, and all those roles you would expect. But this has been the bit that's really made the difference for us. That collaboration across the entire total revenue responsibility areas. Mm-hmm.
And going back to something you just said about how the other departments are learning from the commercial strategy department, that brings me to another topic that I wanted to touch on in these last 5 to 7 minutes that we have, is how do we attract talent in our industry, especially as commercial strategy leaders? because a lot of people who are maybe either considering working a hospitality job or may not know a whole lot about hospitality, they don't even know that commercial strategy is even a thing, right? So they know, okay, there's a housekeeper, there's a general manager, there's maybe a bellhop at the front, and that's all there is to a hotel, right? So I'm curious, how do we attract talent into, especially like the non-operations roles, like the commercial strategy roles?
I feel massively passionate about this. I really do. I think that we all have a responsibility, every single one of us in this room as leaders in our business, to make this an appealing industry to join. And, I sit on the HSMAI board of directors along with some colleagues in the room, and they're doing exceptional work in trying to really bring that exposure. But, I went to my daughter's career fair a few months ago, and they talked about hospitality being an industry to go to if you don't do well at school. And I was like, oh my goodness. And when you really start to think, because like you say, we are in this industry, and our children are probably lucky enough to be exposed to some of the great benefits that come with working in hospitality. But only 2 weeks ago, I supported one of our hotels with a local school visit, and this group of students, they're doing a GCSE in hospitality and catering, and some of them had never seen a hotel room, and they were like, what happens? They're like, we get you sleep here, but then what do you do? And we were like, well, you could go to the gym, and we made pizza with them. They did a spin class, they played some darts, they saw all of that, and the momentum and excitement. But we can't assume that these kids know this stuff.
Right.
And I think, yes, we've got the people going to, there's hotel schools, and, probably Europe does this better than the UK to a degree, but there is a disassociation between education and our industry at the moment. And we need to really all take some ownership of that and do something to really support that journey of getting great people into our industry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also, obviously, like you mentioned before, the point you were going to steal, COVID, definitely put a challenge for all of us because a lot of people left the industry. Mm-hmm. And I think what we notice up in Scandinavia as a whole is we're not the big famous hotel industry country. I came out of hospitality school and everybody was going to go to Dubai and London and Paris, and eventually I ended up in Oslo, and I was like, where's that? So I think it's difficult to retain good talent, and actually brings me back to your question, does it help to get out? Yes, because my last 3 recruits actually, come from individual hotels that we have, and I kind of stole them. And they don't necessarily have a pure revenue background, but it's talent that I'm growing and that have on-the-job training that I say, okay, this is development for the future, because at the end of the day, we also want to build a longer career for them to stay. And I think it's important that we, like you said, that we communicate as well, that there is so much more than just a housekeeper or just a receptionist who stands around and what do they actually do? Because it's so much more. And I know that Norway is very big on that, and they're particularly good in recruiting sort of the line jobs. And but I think for us as well, it's important that we do the same on the back office jobs, and that we really explain that this is a career that you can actually do.
It's really hard though, because we have less people and we've got less time, and there's bigger demands on us. And I think it is making that conscious decision to really invest. And, if you talk to leaders across your business, probably everyone's feeling the same. And it just takes somebody to say, actually, as a business, we're going to stand by this and do something about it. Over half of our GMs are homegrown that have gone through a development program. And, just to be able to use that as a case study going into schools and talk about that you can join companies, and, some of the brands as well do this exceptionally well, of providing those progression routes. But it has to be a conscious decision, because we'll never find the time otherwise.
So we have about maybe 90 seconds here, maybe 2 minutes to kind of wrap up, and I want to get maybe let's do a closing thought here. So someone who's watching this podcast and maybe who's interested in commercial strategy or interested in revenue management, what would you tell that person who's watching, who's maybe looking to start a career in this, and what advice would you give them to maybe accelerate their career and maybe ultimately end up in a leadership position like you guys are in? Any words of wisdom here?
my absolute shortest advice is just say yes to opportunities, because the opportunities are everywhere around, and especially in the smaller companies, I think, where you have to wear a lot of different hats, suddenly you do get the chance and just try something out and say, hey, this could actually be great. And we also do have a talent program where also I actually attended, and we're doing a new start this season. And this is also a great way just to sort of introduce the topic of revenue or commercial. And I think it's important to kind of just push people and say, listen, it might be a scary subject because it's a craft. It's not just something you sit down and do. But I think taking that first step is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kelly.
I think when Brian was talking before about the Gen Z piece into our industry, then, I mean, is there a more perfect industry for that, for all the characteristics that Brian talked about, you know, flexibility, transferable skills, it's fun, you get to travel, you know, there's so many opportunities with it. You can go and do this job in any country, in any culture, and there's, you know, not that many industries where you would be welcomed with open arms in that way. So I think if you're a Gen Z, for me, it's just the perfect choice. You wouldn't want to do anything else.
Nice. Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, we're kind of at time here. So yeah, let's all give everybody a round of applause up here that's on the stage. And I hope that was enjoyable. It was a little experiment for us, but I think it worked out well. So cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody.